Welcome to Pub and Porch, Applied Stoicism in Modern Life, hosted by Adam Piercy and Mick Mulroy. Welcome back to Pub and Porch, Applied Stoicism. I'm your host, Adam, with my co-host Mick Mulroy here. Today, we're going to talk about something that's a mixture of traditional kind of Stoicism episodes about stuff from the past, and also something that I think Mick and I were both talking about is very prevalent today, especially today in the world of social media and things like that, which is what to do, if there's gossip spread around and how you handle it and whether or not you say something or not. And today that means that we're going to be talking about a topic called the Three Sieves of Socrates. That's one way you could call it. It's more sort of Socrates' rules about our speech and preventing gossip and unneeded things like that. So, Mick, you brought up that this was something that you had added to our episode topic list. So why don't you start us off with your first thoughts?
Yeah, thanks, Adam. So the Three Sieves of Socrates, also sometimes called Socrates filters, right?
That's right.
Um,
That's right.
I think it's something you should teach kids really early on. And one of the reasons is oftentimes people will share information without knowing it's true. Obviously, oftentimes it's negative because for whatever reason, negative rumors tend to go around faster than like, hey, did you hear Adam secretly volunteering at the soup kitchen? It's not usually like the positive, right?
Yeah.
So, and oftentimes people, and maybe even honestly think, well, I didn't know it was true. I just passed it on. I'm not saying it's true.
Right.
And as if it kind of takes away some of the guilt to it, right?
Right.
So the three, to start with what they are, of course, for those that don't know,
Sure.
the first question, of course, is it true? And if you don't know it's true or not, that's where I think people get hooked up. If you don't know it's true, then don't repeat it.
Right.
Like if you don't actually have any independent knowledge that you can say confidently you believe it's true, you have to go through all the filters, of course. But to get past the first one, if you're like, I don't know, somebody told me a terrible thing about Fred. Do you have any idea if it's true? Nope. Then why'd you tell Sally? Right.
Right.
That's where it should stop. So if you just don't know, then just stay out of it.
Yeah.
Just stay out of it. And I think you have a responsibility to do that. And then the second one, of course, is it good? Is it is it a positive thing? Generally speaking, I mean, if you're passing a rumor that's positive about somebody that you believe is true, I mean, good for you. You should give friend or even non-friends accolades for doing true good stuff, right? But if it's negative, that's when you really got it. That's when I think the last one really has to matter a lot, which is it helpful? So if you think it's true and you're confident it's true, if it's not good, is it helpful? Like, I'm just coming up with an example, but that a person who, I don't know, does pet walking, has a history of stealing things out of the houses with the pets where she goes, gets them.
Right.
Or he, right?
Right.
You believe it's true. It is not good. But the question on the helpful is, are you telling the person who's thinking about hiring that person as a pet walker? You see what I mean?
Sure.
So if you do those each time, I think you'll be not only way better off, because ultimately it's not just the reputation of the person that you're potentially spreading a rumor about. It's your reputation.
Yeah.
It's your reputation. If you spread misinformation or stuff you don't know, negative for no reason, right? That's all on you.
Yeah.
And so it's not on the person, it's on you. And I think if people can learn that, I mean, they should teach that early on in school and give real ironclad examples. Hopefully mine or kind of made sense.
Yeah.
But I think kids need to learn that really early on. But think about all the issues that kids go through when they're growing up.
Yeah.
It almost always revolves around this stuff. And now it's social media amplified, right?
Yeah.
So now a person puts something on social media that for some reason now has more authority because it's written and it's in some kind of, um, you know,
Hmm. Yeah.
it just gets worse, right? So I think that needs to be addressed early on, and
Hmm.
and people need to understand that you're when you do those things, you pass false information that's bad. It makes you look bad because you're doing the wrong thing. And if you get that in your head early on, I think there'd be a lot less strife, to be frank, for kids growing up, and of course, adults in as well. So
Yeah.
that's where I'd start with it. But do you have any examples, or do you have any like life examples from this?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, and if we sort of take them one at a time, right? And we talk about the truth one, do you know whether or not it's true, right? I mean, um, especially nowadays, right? I mean, people, there's a lot of stuff going out on the internet and whatnot for anybody nowadays. It feels like, or between friends, or that stuff wildfire that sort of spreads like wildfire. And that's the thing that kind of gets me right off the bat, is where no one substantiated it, but now everybody knows about it, and no one's even taking a second to fact check it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there was a period of my life about just over 10 years ago where I had a significant life change. And what ended up getting spread around was this idea that it was all my fault, the change that had occurred. And it was a personal situation. And I was sitting there going like, that the only person who knows that that's true is me, or not true or not. The only person who knows if that's true or not is me.
Mm-hmm.
And it was interesting to me that people who I had known for 10 or 15 years at that point, close friends who I'd been through difficult situations with, in terms of personal strife they'd gone through, support through, happy times and sad times. And it was really interesting to me how quickly that traveled around. And none of them ever asked whether or not they never asked me whether or not it was true. They just basically said that was the case, right? Was that, and it kind of went, okay, how does that even happen? And that, so, the thing is that, I would say in that circumstance, right? Not even like if someone hears something about me and they want to talk to me about it and say, well, what's the deal? I stand up and say, great, let's talk about it. I'm trained both in my life and my work to look at things right in the face and call them out, right? And so when someone does that to me, I can say, okay, great. Let's talk about it, right? It's okay if someone says something and they're like, I'm not sure about this, right? That's different than saying, oh, well, Adam did this or Adam did that. And it's an interesting kind of thing because, I think everybody out there has to think about, what are the effects of this if I don't know it's true? Will I lose this person who's been with me, like taking me to the hospital, help me move, right? Plays with their kids. Like I'm a lot of people's Uncle Rocket, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't have any kids of my own, as we were talking about in the series we just finished. And so that's a key thing for me, right? Just the fact that people just assume that it was true, and it's kind of like, how does that happen when you've had this long relationship with someone? I think as well, though, right? We were talking about this just before we started recording. I think you can even flip these around about, in some ways, as to what do you do if somebody is saying, what do you like? So I would never spread gossip, because if it's untrue, I mean, I don't like gossip anyways. But on the flip side, what if somebody's spreading something about you? And I think Stoics or Socrates would say something along the lines of, well, if it's untrue, then it will end up solving itself anyways, right? If it's true, then everyone knows and it doesn't matter. If it's untrue, people will find out and it won't matter what was said before anyways, right? And I think that that's kind of, a way that someone could look at it in this circumstance. But yeah, that's the example I would use. I mean, I'm being vague about the details because it's my own personal life, but ultimately, that was something that happened, and it was very, at the time, disturbing, but also very much it was a very destructive thing to not know what was true or not, right? I mean, and to have no one me, and you kind of go, that's odd. Why wouldn't somebody just say, like, what's the deal here? Especially when you've spent so long in a deep friendship with somebody. But that's what happens, and that's life. So different time
Yeah,
now.
it is different when it's about you, right?
Yeah,
For most people, it's hard to ignore because your reputation is, in many ways, everything. Right? If you
absolutely.
look at it from the Stoics' perspective, like your reputation, although I guess we would look at it slightly different, but it is based on your character, right?
Right.
Whether you adhere to the four cardinal virtues.
Mm-hmm.
So if somebody's degrading your reputation on any of those, you would think that it would be something you need to address, right?
Yeah.
I think there's plenty in Stoicism literature that would say it's not something you can control. It's not in your power. You should just ignore it. But then you could flip it around and say, well, yeah, it is. You can actually address it and say it's not true, right?
Right.
So that would be in your power. So
Mm-hmm.
I guess you have to make your own decision there. What I've seen in the past is, and this is mostly as child or young person, if somebody said you said something about somebody else, kind of thing, like
Yeah.
trying to cause strife between you and a friend of yours by another friend of yours or what have you.
Yeah.
I have found the fastest way, and it is just to simply get all parties on the phone or in
Yeah.
person. In person, obviously better, and just address it. Like, don't. I'll talk to this person about that. I'll talk to this person about that. I'll tell you know what I mean. It's just like because most people that like to spread rumors, they got some issues, and when confronted, um, they shut pretty quick,
Yeah.
right? So if it's like somebody said that you said something about your friend Stan, the somebody being Bob, and you and
Mm-hmm.
Stan and Bob, you just said, okay, let's cool, let's get together and have lunch.
Yeah.
So in front of you, I'm telling you, I didn't say this, and you know I didn't say this,
Right.
and then all of a sudden it's just, you see what I mean? It's
Yeah.
yeah, because
Totally.
if you were the person that was told that somebody else said something bad about you, and he's willing to come and with the other person and prove it, you kind of
Yeah.
it cuts to the chase. You get my point. So
Absolutely.
I would say sometimes just being direct about it uh, is helpful, and
Yeah.
I would say if somebody attacks your character falsely, I wouldn't turn the other cheek. Maybe that's not the right answer. I would address it specifically. I wouldn't spend a lot of time on it, but I mean, I would address it to the people that matter and say, no, actually, I didn't do that,
Yeah.
and I'm not going to let my character get um, you know, dragged through the mud just because somebody else feels like it's for whatever reason, something good to do. So, although what I'm saying is use the three Sieves for any information. And when it comes to you, one, have a little bit of a thick skin. Two, do
Yeah.
an assessment actually, because maybe it's true.
Yeah.
you
Actually,
know,
I think
you
you have to
know,
have humility for that. You have to have that kind of humility. Totally.
you do. If somebody says something negative about you, you need to have the ability to go, oh, damn, I was rude. I
Yeah.
shouldn't have said that. And then apologize.
Yeah.
That's the fastest way to repair your reputation if it's true, is to show humility.
Yeah.
But then I guess so this is mixed thieves now, right? So
Yeah.
one, assess yourself. Is it true? Make
Hmm.
amends and don't do it again. If
Yeah.
it isn't true, I'd say defend yourself. I mean, not with counter accusations and BS and stuff, but just the truth.
Right.
If it's about your character, if it's about something that's kind of dumb, don't you don't have to have another. I think another good Stoic principle is you don't have to have an opinion about everything,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
You
Totally.
don't
Totally.
have to jump in on Facebook and explain why you think a vaccine works or not if you're not a medical professional, for
Right.
example. Like if
Yeah.
you have no basis to know, um, zip it. Uh, and enjoy the fact that you don't have to have an opinion on everything. It doesn't make you a better person to chime in when you don't actually have anything to contribute. That's
Oh,
probably another
right.
episode. But those so
Maybe.
my three thieves or two thieves after that is it true? So make an assessment. If it is true, make an amends. If it is uh, not true and it's about your character, be direct. So I guess I'm adding three more to the loop.
I think I think you have to look at it that way though, because there's people will talk about the Stoic examples of like someone gets punched in the face and then they turn around and say I don't remember what happened. It's fine, like move on. And that's a pretty extreme example, but in this example as well, I think it is important to talk about this because we, especially in the world today, it's very common for us to cross paths with way more people than we ever did before, right? Like I was talking about this with a relative of mine recently about how the world is this huge place now, and so back in the, let's say it's American Civil War period, right? Like your sons go off to war, there is
Mhm.
no way that you know that where they are at any given time. You don't know whether they're alive or dead. As soon as they're outside of your eye shot, you don't know that you're there. So your world is very tiny, right? In the world today, you go on the internet and you are encountering, literally, you could encounter all 7 billion people or 8 billion people on the globe, right?
Mhm.
And so you just have to get used to the fact that like you're going to encounter all these different people, and some of them won't check the truth and some of them won't ask the question about whether or not it's good or not. And so you kind of just have to, I'm with you on the thick skin side, but addressing it as well, I think is really important because also, the way you address it even is part of your brand. That's part of who you are. Right. Um, and I think that's a really important thing to definitely maintain. You can't, now remember, Socrates or someone else would always say this, like at some point you can't make somebody think a certain thing. So you could tell them the absolute truth that
Right.
contradicts whatever's happened and they could still disagree with you. But I mean, that's just the way that it is. I think we should talk about the second one now, though, which is is goodness, the sieve of goodness. Is it good?
Yeah.
Is it positive? Is it kind? And this, I think, is a tough one because a lot of people find out things are true, and then they're still stuck going, "What do I do with this information?" Right. So, what's your initial thoughts on the goodness one? Because I feel like as Stoics, you and I probably will have split opinions on this, maybe.
Yeah. Well, I guess of course, it starts with how you define good. But I
Yeah.
think most people know what's a good rumor about somebody and a bad rumor. And again, people generally don't spread rumors about good things.
I
it's,
know it's so weird.
uh,
It's so
yeah,
weird. Humans can be
it's,
very out about that.
yeah. I mean, if it's true and it's good,
Yeah.
I think it takes a whole different category, right? Because then you're promoting goodness by highlighting what somebody did. I
Yeah.
suppose if they don't want to be known to be like some kind of hidden, benevolent person, it still could be considered bad to do,
Yeah.
even though it's a good thing. So you have to think about it that way. But like good from I guess so. Good from that person's perspective. You see what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
Hmm.
so they don't want to be known for the charitable work they're doing. They want it to be hidden. Like Jesus said, basically, um, just do it without the need for accolades. So then it is good. You're doing better. The person's doing good things, but they don't want to be known. So it's bad for you to spread it. You see what I
Yeah.
mean? So
Hmm.
it's from their perspective, not yours,
Yeah.
is the way it's. And if it's bad, it really comes down to the third one. Like,
Yeah.
is not passing the information more harmful, right? And
Yeah.
sometimes it can be neutral. Like you could like it isn't plus or negative, but it's bad. If it's not a plus or negative and it's bad, just shut up. Just don't talk about it. It
Right.
has to have a real purpose. Like the one I use, where you're concerned, like it was you're going to hire a dog walker, and I know for a fact the person had stolen from somebody that they had done in the past. Like
Right.
it would be harmful for me not to pass the information. You see what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
So that's what I mean. It really comes down to whether it's helpful. If it's not helpful, if it's just bad information or it's just bad stuff about a person, but it
Yeah.
has no purpose, it's a lot of assessment that you have to do as a person.
Yeah.
and and I do think that you have to really look at it from that person's perspective, because it's you're you and they're them, and they have their own view of the world, and if it's not a good thing from their perspective, then you don't get to decide it that it is.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm with you on that one. And I think, there's definitely what I was saying about being a little split on this, right? Is there's definitely this magnanimity part of um, justice, the virtue of justice that we talk about, and benevolence towards others. And I totally agree with that. Frankly, I think in many cases, people, I think, and we were just talking about this, right? Humans always talk about the negative stuff, right? It's very rare for people to um, start with the positives. I something I do a lot of the time in terms of learning about new groups that I encounter or new programs I'm on is to do something called a SWOT analysis, which stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And the box that is the hardest for the team to fill in always is strengths, which I think is a very human trait, right? And I remember there was I think I can't remember who said this, but it's like if you write, there's a parable about a school teacher who's writing the numbers 1 to 100 on the board, and she intentionally messes up and goes and writes 98 twice, and then 99, 100, right? And basically she was saying something to the class about, see, you scored a 99 out of 100 on that, so that's like an A plus, right? It's a
Hmm.
top mark, but the only thing people will remember is that weird 1%. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
sometimes the 1% of your actions is really bad. But at the same time, it's easy to look at this and say, humans for some reason seem to pick on the negative stuff. I don't know why that is. And in the world of social media today, the negative, and sometimes rightly so, but sometimes wrongly so, the negative seems to be expanded in scope. It just increases by huge factors every time, right? Basically, someone does something and it goes on social media, and all of a sudden, this person's being, well, the term that people use is canceled. I'm not sure that I really like that term, but it's something that happens a lot today. So I do think that personally, I think we do need to be magnanimous when it comes to talking about these things that we talk about as human beings. But we have to be very careful to make sure that uh, you know we're also not flipping it the other way and remembering only the 1%. I think it is.
Yes.
So then the one that you were talking about, and I haven't really commented on too much yet, is the necessity part. And I think this is a really interesting one, right? Because the question about I feel like there's a question about right and wrong about this that is kind of being asked by this sieve, which is um, so the way that it's like, the when I looked it up, the way that it was framed is it the sieve of necessity, excuse me, is it essential or useful for me to know what you are so excited to tell me, or for them to know what you're so excited to tell them? And for me, I mean, I this is one that I find comes up a lot in some of the work that I do. I mentor a lot of people, and I go and I do talks at. I work with groups across, engineering people across my professional organization and some other ones. And what's really interesting is that people a lot of the time, right? They want your, I don't know if you've ever experienced this. They want your referral because they know that you're like I'm a director on in a company that works with the space program, right? So there's some level of, I think, cloud is what people would think about it as. And so people will ask you, they'll be like, can I get a referral? But I don't know that person yet at all. I've met them one time for a 5-minute conversation in a meeting. And I
Hmm.
very commonly say to people like that, it's like, I don't think it's really useful for me to talk about you to others right now. I don't know you. It goes back to the first and second sieves. I don't know anything about you, so I have no truth about you, and I have
Hmm.
no. I want to be positive and kind, but at the same time, like, I don't know how useful it would be for me to help you right now, because if anyone asked me how I know you, I'd say I've met you for 5 minutes at a networking event, right?
Right.
So is it useful for people to hear from me on topics like this? I think so. Sometimes depends, right? I provide mentoring and references to lots of people. It's a very small the engineering technology world in the Toronto area is very small. But at the same time, I have to ask, like, does someone need to know this from me or not? Am I the right person to give this information? Is it necessary that it comes from me? Sometimes the answer is no, right? And I think that's something that we kind of have to think about with the necessity part, because even though I had a great conversation with, I met a young woman at an event for women in engineering recently, and I literally talked to her for 5 minutes, and she asked me about giving her a referral right off the bat, and I was like, I don't know that I know you enough to even do that. And I said to her in response, I said, I'd love to look at your resume. If you want to talk a little bit more, I'm happy to do that. But right, like I don't think a referral is right to come from me right now, because I don't know enough of your history. I don't know anything. Like, we've never worked together. And so that's where I have to say, is it useful to come from me? And I say, no, it's not, because I have no basis of fact to work off of.
Mhm.
And I think that's kind of one of those kind of circumstances. So, but yeah, so I think there's one other thing I kind of wanted to talk about with this topic, which was, so Socrates' rule was that either passes all three sieves or you don't say it.
Mhm.
And
Correct.
what I found interesting with what you were saying was that it felt like you were kind of going like, you got to hit at least a couple of them, but sometimes it
Well,
sounded like you might be thinking that maybe Socrates is too strict, or what do you think about that?
well, he's talking, at least the way I learned it, he's talking
Yeah.
specifically about rumors about others.
Yeah.
So I would agree with his three sieves for others. My only caveat, because you brought up the fact if it was about you,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
and I think it's debatable from my reading of Stoic literature
Yeah.
of whether you should just ignore bad things said about you or whether you should defend it. And what I'm saying, at least the way I view it, is if it's about your character. I mean, there's thing I have a law degree. There's a thing called slander per se, right? So if somebody says
Right.
bad things about you, if it's about your occupation, it's about your marriage, your relationships. It's presumed to be harmful. That's what the per se part is. You see what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like they might be saying, "Oh, Adam sucks at basketball," and I'm not saying you do, or Mick sucks at
I
basketball.
do. It's
Or,
okay.
you get my point. You get my point. Sorry,
Yeah.
long night, long day. I was hiking out on the glacier yesterday with my friends. It was
It's
really
all
cool,
right.
but a little tired. But if it doesn't like go to your core being, at least the way the law of the United States looks at it, then it's in a different category. But if it's things that anybody would say, Adam's a terrible engineer, right? Oh,
Yeah.
wait, that's like your livelihood, dude, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Or Mick's doing something that he wasn't supposed to do in his relationship. That's matters, right? So what I'm saying is Socrates is talking about rumors about other people. I'm talking about stuff about you. If it
Yeah.
doesn't matter, don't waste your time. But if it goes to your core character, then I think you should defend yourself. You don't
Yeah.
have to. You don't have to like go beat somebody up or anything. I'm just saying you should state the truth. It's just not true. And if
Hmm.
and if it's something that you can actually confront, I don't mean being confrontational, but just address straight up instead of in the
Yeah.
shadows kind of thing. I'd recommend doing it. I and that's what I tell my kids. Right.
Yeah.
So you have to make that. Those are mixed these filters, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Mixed
It's about
sieves.
you. Is it? And the true thing, it still kind of goes the same route, right? If it's true, hey, you probably should correct yourself and
Yeah.
apologize and publicly do so. If it's not
Absolutely.
true, you should address it with the person and state the facts because I don't know. I think your character matters, and it's really at the end of the day, and this is very stoic. All that matters. It isn't about the size of your house or you know the expense of your car or what have you. It's
Yeah.
about your character. So I think you deserve to, uh, you know, argue back on that.
Yeah, for sure. I think though, and we've talked a lot. We mentioned social media here already. Social media came up quite a bit when we were doing our raising kids episodes, right? I think it's really important though to also recognize that, um, you know, I don't want to say it's like take one shot and then if it doesn't land with whoever it is, they're just never going to change their mind. But like at some point, I think, you have to look at the situation and figure out whether or not you need to respond. And if you need to respond, I think that's great. But, in the world that you and I are starting to exist in a little bit more, I mean, you've been far more exposed to media because you work with ABC and things like that. But ultimately, like you're going to end up where you're going to get a troll on the internet, right? It's going to say some really nasty things about you, right? And I think you have to find out what's the right balance for you, right? If that person is saying and making accusations that are totally to the core of your character and harmful sort of defamation, I think I'm with you on that one. You have to push back and say, look, this isn't right. You know what I mean? Like this is not okay. And the truth is X, Y, Z or whatever it is. But at the same time, I think there's an interesting thing we see with humans now where the anonymity of the internet makes it so that people can say whatever they want and it feels like there's no consequences. And I'm not saying that they should have no consequences or not. It's just at some point, it's a faceless handle at username generic 1357, right? Saying whatever about you. Like, what does it matter? Half the time it feels like it's bots nowadays, right? Like we're hearing so many statistics about the fact
Yeah,
that most of the internet is bots, right? It's like,
right.
okay, great. And so
That's
you end
almost
up,
a good thing because then it
yeah,
becomes so irrelevant that
yeah,
it's not worth your time. One of the
yeah,
reasons why that is the case is at least in the United States, they give immunity to these companies,
yeah,
right? So that somebody can get on their platform and just say terrible things that are untrue about other people. And there's
yeah.
you can still sue that person,
Hmm.
but you can't sue the company that gave them the platform to spread it to everybody.
Right.
And that needs
Yeah.
to change, right? That wasn't the case. It was just for these social media companies.
Yeah. I mean, there's always is it, which one is freedom of speech? Is it First Amendment? No. Yes.
Yeah, First Amendment,
First
freedom of
Amendment. Yeah.
speech, correct?
Yeah. Freedom of speech. It's First Amendment, right? For us, if it limits us in Canada for that, we would call that we were talking about this recently. We would call that a charter rights issue, right? Um, which is our sort of Bill of Rights, document. And it's important to know that that's a thing that we probably do, as a society have to address. I mean, at some point, in the same way that we're asking people, like if you hear a rumor, you need to assess yourself. I feel like there's a flip to that too, towards the greater society about like when certain things like this happen, right? When people can get defamed and slandered and there can be libelous everything all over the internet or whatever, and it just doesn't matter, right? It's like people are like, well, anybody can say whatever they want, and maybe that is true. I think you have to ask yourselves as a society, like, are we championing the right course of action here? Because it's not good. Like, because there's good discourse when two people disagree. As much as you and I keep saying it, as much as you and I do agree, we do disagree on certain things, I'm sure. But at the same time, we can talk about it, and we've talked about this on the podcast before, right? Like, rumor is not discourse. Rumor is not conversation. It's not talking it out. It's not finding the right solution with your peers, your colleagues, your coworkers, your family, your friends, whatever. Rumor is just that, right? And it carries such a negative connotation. So I would hope that maybe one day we, as a people, right, can figure it, because Canada and the U.S. are so closely tied together in many ways, right? It's like what happens in something. I get news about places all over the U.S. and so it's it's a pretty normal thing that I see all the time. But at some point, like I was saying, you need to figure out as a society, like, are you going to champion the rumors or are you going to champion like ethical, moral treatment of others and, factual discourse and actual discourse, right? And I don't know, sometimes it feels like we're not championing that right now, but you and I are trying to change
No,
that a little bit.
you're right. Because so much of what we're talking about is also tied to politics,
It
right?
is.
Which seems to be permeating every aspect of life now, which
Yeah.
is unfortunate. And so much of politics is not about the promotion of ideas over other ideas. It's
Yeah.
actually attacking other people and making it a character issue.
Yeah. And I said this on an early episode we had where at some point I think I just got a little frustrated when we were not with you, but we were talking about political candidates. And it's like, I'm tired of everyone saying, well, he doesn't do that and or she doesn't do that or they don't do that or whatever. And I'm always like, tell me what you're going to do. What's your platform? Right. Which is, because otherwise it's just hearsay and happenstance, I guess. But
Yeah. So that's we're gotten very used to that.
I know.
Not that we should, right? But
No, exactly.
there's no real easy answer to that because it
No.
seems to be going all in the wrong direction. My answer is, which doesn't solve the problem necessarily, but you can do what you can do is to try to have a whole new generation of people who were raised on virtue ethics,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
Kind of that core educational foundation is, to my understanding, is not present. It used to
Hmm.
be very, very common where
Yeah.
kids would learn virtue ethics through philosophy, of course, because that's where it comes from. Um, but now, there's so many competing things that adults think kids should know that they've kind of lost that. You know, that's one. I'm uh, come from an Irish Catholic family, at least historically, right? So
Yeah.
the Irish were really good about teaching uh, philosophy. Irish American, I'm sure the
Yeah.
Irish too, um, because it was such a classical foundational education for,
Yeah.
a Catholic school, for example.
Hmm.
So hopefully it stays that way, and hopefully it expands beyond, just that type of school system. It goes back into the public school system.
Yeah.
You know, it's not really,
Hopefully.
you're not teaching religion, right? It's a philosophy. So you can be whatever religion or no religion and still learn the different types of, Aristotelian virtue ethics, Stoicism, other philosophies, right? It's not all about Western philosophy, but
Yeah.
it, kids need to have that foundation of ethics, morality, and integrity.
Yeah.
Um, because just because you're a smart person doesn't make you a good person, right?
Yeah. And the natural extension of those, I think, whether it's Stoic virtues or cardinal virtues from in some other form, so many of them overlap with each other. I
Yep.
think that it overlaps heavily with what we're talking about today, right? I mean, there's a very clear passage from Meditations with Marcus where he says, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true,
Yep.
do not say it." I might have flipped it, but he literally says that. Period.
Yeah,
That's
you
what he's
flipped
saying.
it, but you're right. That's that.
Yeah.
You probably could sum up our entire episode by just doing that, saying that, right?
Yeah. Probably.
Marcus was very laconic in his speech there, but
Yeah.
that's very true. I mean, if
Yeah.
you gotta hold yourself to the standard. The other issue is it's tough to be that person in a world that's not. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
It's not an easy path. I mean, plenty of people like to spread rumors. They just
Yeah.
do for whatever
Yeah.
reason. You got to be bigger than that, and you got to teach your kids to be bigger than that. And
You do.
eventually, people, even the people that like spreading rumors, I think not that you should care that much, but I think they would respect you for it. It's like, hey, that person never says anything bad about anybody else,
Right.
right? You want to be that person, and never talk about a person that's not in the room. You
Yeah.
know, that's
It
like a
doesn't
little
make.
life lesson.
Yeah. It doesn't really make sense. So it's
Unless you're
funny
saying
because
good things,
unless you're saying good things, and then it's say as
Yeah.
much as you like. Yeah. And I was going to tell a quick story, and I forgot about saying it earlier, but we were talking about, um, you know, being a good person and saying this, and it can actually show stuff. So my grandfather, who he passed away a couple of years ago now, Newfoundlander, was born in Newfoundland before it was a Canadian province, so he had to immigrate to Canada.
Right.
Um, he used to watch the news and read the newspaper, and he was a very chatty man. And he used to say, "He who lives in a glass house can't hide." He used to say that all the time when we'd
Yeah. Right.
watch. I don't know if you've ever heard that phrase before, but he used
I
to say
haven't.
that all the time. And like at the point, like we'd watch the. He loved. There's a channel in Toronto called CP24, which is a 24-hour news channel. It's got like rolling stuff and weather and all this stuff. It's a very busy screen when you're watching it, and it was always on with him, throughout parts of the day. And he'd hear like a so and so, city councilor said blah 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 blah, and then he would just go. He who lives in a glass house can't hide. And then he'd like just walk out of the room.
Right. Right.
And I remember thinking,
Yeah.
yeah, it's not a bad takeaway from him. So, but yeah, my
Yeah.
grandfather.
I'll use that one. I'll use that. That's a good one.
Yeah. Well, we should wrap up here. But one thing I think that would be, this is definitely a topic that we'd love to hear from everybody about. I know I always say that, but I mean these practicum episodes are the ones that Mick and I, that's the applied part of the podcast, really, and we definitely like that. So we'd love to hear from you by commenting on the video, and write us info@pubandporch.com. Also, we have some new initiatives starting up. I'm just going to kind of hint at that. We have some new initiatives as Pub and Porch starting up on the interwebs, so keep an eye out for those things as they start to come out. But yeah, I think that's it for us today, and we will see you on the next one. Cheers, Meg.
Sláinte, Ad.
Thank you for listening to the Pub and Porch podcast. If you'd like to find out more about the podcast or its host, head over to pubandporch.com, and you can listen to all our episodes on Spotify, Apple, or whichever platform you prefer. And if you'd like to help out with the podcast, you can find us on Patreon. Drop us an email if you have a comment on any past episode, you have a suggestion for future episodes, or you have an essay on an important topic for Stoicism. Send it to us, and then we can be reached at info@pubandporch.com. Until next time, Pub and Porch out.
Today's music is provided by Heath Cantu from epidemicsound.com.